Welcome back to the channel, folks. This is Shane. In today's video, I'm going to see whether or not we need an inline preamp when it comes to dynamic microphones when using the Rodecaster Pro. Now, the Rodecaster Pro has enough gain to drive a lot of these microphones, but we're going to see if we still get a better sound using an SE Dynamite. Now, the results will be pretty similar if you're using a CloudLifter, an SE Dynamite like we'll be using today, or something like a Fethead. They all offer more gain for these type of microphones. So if this is helpful, please give the video a thumbs up. What I'm going to do is timestamp all the different microphones in the description below. Let's get into it. Now, for this first test, I'm using the Rode Procaster going into the SE Dynamite, then into the back of the Rodecaster Pro, and I have the gain or level set to 14, so it's down quite low as the preamp is giving us a lot more gain. And now you're listening to the Rode Procaster without the SE Dynamite. I have the gain on the Rodecaster Pro up at 37, and I feel like I need to get closer to the microphone. So I'm going to notch this up to 41, which gives me a very similar gain sound in my headphones, but it doesn't quite sound like it's got the same niceness to it, but it's absolutely usable. So if you're going to be using one of these microphones with the Rodecaster Pro and you don't have an SE Dynamite, you can absolutely get away with it, but I still think I like the niceness of having this in the signal chain. And now over to the legendary Shure SM7B. Now I've got this set to the dynamic preset while enabling phantom power to work with the SE Dynamite. So I've got plenty of gain, and I have the gain set on the Rodecaster Pro set to 16. So it's down quite low as well. I'm getting plenty of gain. I can sit back from the microphone and still get a very hot signal. Up close, it sounds like this. Let's try it now without the SE Dynamite. And now you're listening to the Shure SM7B without the SE Dynamite. So 28 less dBs without this, and the gain is now cranked up to 41. And again, this is the preset for dynamic microphones. This is how it sounds up close, so you can see if it makes much of a difference. Let me know in the comment section. Up next, you're listening to the Rode PodMic. Now I've got this set up with the gain structure at 13 going into the SE Dynamite. So you're getting that 28 dB of boost. It sounds really hot in the headphones. I could probably sit back quite a way and still get audio out of this as well. But up close, it sounds like this. And having the gain so far down on the preamps internally within the Rodecaster Pro is a really good thing. I think this sounds very usable. Again, I'm using the preset made for this microphone, currently with phantom power on. And now we're doing an audio test of the Rode PodMic without the SE Dynamite. So that 28 decibels of gain is now removed. And I have the preamp up, or the level signal set to 37 on the Rodecaster. And I think this sounds really, really nice. Now, just a quick tip. I think these microphones sound a bit better the closer you get to them. As soon as you back off them, especially without this too, they're going to basically thin out quite a lot. You really got to get up close to these to get the best sound. But I would say this is very usable without the SE Dynamite. And now over to the legendary Shure SM57 instrument microphone. A lot of people like to use these for podcasts as well because the off-axis rejection is great. I have the gain structure set to 14 on the Rodecaster using the SE Dynamite. This sounds very, very hot. It's very, very bright. I don't really like the sound of these a whole lot for podcasting. They're just a little bit over-enhanced on the top end. Of course, again, you could knock some of that out and re-EQ it a little bit, but this is the dynamic preset using phantom power to power the SE Dynamite. And now you're listening to the Shure SM57 without the SE Dynamite. I'm going to go ahead and already say I much prefer the sound of this in the signal chain. It keeps everything a lot more quiet. Now, this has a noise gate on it as well, but when I talk, I can audibly hear a little bit more hiss behind the sound than I did with this. So already I'm going to say this is the best choice if you're going to be using an SM57. Again, it's not essential, but I've got the gain on the Rodecaster now set to 44. Any lower and it drastically gives me a different sound, and I'll show you that now. And now with the gain on the SM57 set to 40 already, I feel like I need to get up closer to give me that big full sound, and that's just inherent of those dynamic microphones. So if I was to move back now, the voice is going to drop out a whole lot more. I can really hear the gate causing a few problems. Now, you could turn all of that off. I'm just giving you an apples to apples comparison. I much preferred it with this, giving me a much cleaner signal. And now over to one of the best sounding, least expensive microphones on this list. This is the Ultra Voice XM8500 from Behringer. this thing holds its own with the PodMic and also with the Rode Procaster. Now, I did a video comparing them, and as you can hear already, this sounds amazing. Using the SE Dynamite, I have the gain set all the way down to 14, and it sounds clean, it sounds full. These are a fantastic microphone. I can highly recommend them. Let's see how it responds now without the SE Dynamite. And now over to the XM8500 from Behringer without the SE Dynamite. I still think this sounds great. It just doesn't sound as hot and pumpy as it did with this in the signal chain. I have the gain set to 37. This is absolutely usable. I almost think it's maybe more usable than the PodMic once you start getting back from it. Being that it's a live performance microphone, it gives you a little bit more from the side to side. So if that's important to you, definitely get one of these. I think these sound fantastic. If you're on a budget, or if you've blown the money on something like the Rodecaster Pro and you need four or five different microphones, get these. They're really, really good, and up close they sound fantastic. Much better than they should for their price. I really like them, so I don't think you need the SE Dynamite with this mic. And now over to the least expensive microphone on the list, going through the SE Dynamite into the Rodecaster Pro with the gain set at 14. This is the Behringer SL84C. Now this is like $14 US or something. It's really cheap, like 13 bucks. I think I paid $30 for it in Australia, or 28 or something like that. It doesn't sound anywhere near as good as the XM8500. So if you're going to pick between one of these, get the XM8500. But I know there's people out there that probably have this microphone. I bought it, so I'm sure other people did. And this actually doesn't sound as bad as I thought it would. Probably because it's going through the SE Dynamite, giving it a much better sound. But up close, there's next to no proximity effect like all the other microphones. But it also gives you a little bit of freedom to turn your head and talk without losing the audio. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's test it out now without the SE Dynamite. And now you're listening to the Behringer SL84C without the SE Dynamite. Now, surprisingly, this is very, very usable. I've got the gain cranked up to 38, so it's starting to push to the point where if I turn it up any more than this, it's not going to sound great. But overall, this is still very usable. If you're on a super tight budget, you'll get away with this with the Rodecaster. But it did sound to my ear a little bit clearer and nicer with the SE Dynamite. But again, don't buy this mic unless you've got no other choice. Get the XM8500. All right, so let's wrap this video up. I'm back to my Procaster and I'm using the SE Dynamite, and wow, after hearing it against the SL84C, I much prefer this microphone. Funnily enough, I think the Ultra Voice really held its own with this. Go back and listen to it. I've got timestamps. You can click back and forth. All right, so do you need an SE Dynamite to make the most out of the Rodecaster Pro? Kind of. It just depends on the microphone. So my suggestion is, if you've got one of these, or you've got a Shure SM7B or something that's still really gain hungry, you're going to get a much cleaner sound using an inline preamp. But it's not essential. If you want to save $100 or $200, depending on where you live, you won't need one. Now, there are some intrinsic differences between the CloudLifter, the SE Dynamite, the FET head in terms of the gain structure and all that kind of stuff. And I might do a video about that coming up, but there's plenty of them already out there. But overall, I think it's a wise investment depending on how fussy you are with the audio. The thing I noticed just sitting here with the headphones on, I could hear more white noise or a little bit more hiss behind my voice once I started cranking the gain up on the Rodecaster. So if you're the kind of person where that's going to bother you, then absolutely get an SE Dynamite or something like that. I think the SE Dynamite's a good value for money compared with other options out there. They're far cheaper than the CloudLifter. You get a little bit more gain, which means you can also turn the preamps down on whatever interface you're using. If you're using the Rodecaster Pro, like I said, you can still record without one of them, but I still recommend it. And I really think I bought a couple of these microphones alive, including the SM7B and the Ultra Voice. Still, man, I really like this. Let me know what you think of this microphone. If you want to find out about any of this gear as well, by the way, there'll be some affiliate links down in the description. Thanks again for watching. Catch you soon. See ya.